went over some stuff, some notes I'd taken from years ago, where I taught about the concept of rotation, or the understanding of how things rotate within us and then outside of us as well. And rotation can be used for lots of things. If you're aware of the way they work for you and against you, and the way they move us in unpredictable ways. So this week I'm going to be teaching all the classes, the kids, whether it's the adults as well as the archery program, about this concept of understanding rotations. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put this video together today just because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and people are going to ask me how I train with this concept. Because for when I start training, I start with like the end in mind, and then I kind of backtrack. And I've worked with this concept so much, so I already know what the end looks like. And now I'm coming to the very beginning. So how can the regular student training in Systema understand the concept of a rotation, training at home and on their own? And that way they have some sort of sense as to how I develop my skills. So it's not just, well, here's a manual doing some amazing stuff at club. You understand how I've developed them. Okay, so the concept of rotation, let's start from a very basic level, right? So when I think of rotations, so the first place I would start would be watch people rotating, all kinds, whether it's dancers, whether it's a guy doing shot put, whether it's people doing the discus and those Olympic sports. But lots of people rotate. Gymnasts rotate, figure skaters rotate. Any rotation, rolls, falls, tumbles, anywhere where there's a rotation, even airplanes and the way they kind of rotate in the air, anything that has a rotation motion, mechanical engineers, the forces, right? So it's nice to watch what it is that I'm talking about. So watch it outside of yourself, and even outside of martial arts. Like, see the power of rotation in all kinds of stuff. See the power of rotation in a football, in a soccer ball, in a baseball, in sports, in life, in mechanics. So I start with like a little bit of research, just watching video, right? And that puts you in a good headspace to understand your body and what we're looking for, right? We have an idea of it. So that's where I take a lot of my inspiration. It's not so much in fighting. I mean, fighting has a lot for me, but I also take inspiration from nature and different parts, and then bring that into Systema and the martial art aspects of my life. So watch a lot of video, any kind, anything that inspires you about rotations. And then, rotations as they speak to even strength, rotations as they speak to even flexibility. There are people that really are great in rotating and getting extra couple of inches or millimeters out of their stretch. And same with strength. There's rotational strength, right? That twisting, those guys that are plumbers, they have such strong grips, that guys that rotate tend to build a different type of muscle than people that just do things linearly, right? So even how rotation can be used in health and fitness as well as other parts. So let's begin. So as always, stay nice and kind of straight. And as anybody that's ever trained in Systema, there's always a big focus on breathing and relaxing. I'm just gonna not keep saying that to you guys in the video, but just know that there's always should be a lot of breath and a lot of relaxation when you're trying this, okay? So as I'm staying straight, I'm gonna start with my very posture. So I feel my head nice and straight. So again, this is how I would train at home before you come to class, so that you have an understanding of the concept of rotation, right? So this is where we're going. So I stay nice and straight, and just with my eyes, I start to kind of turn and I rotate like my neck. And I feel that where my neck ends, and then it won't go any further. It's kind of like locking, right? So just as it gets to about lock, I start to rotate my chest and my middle part of my spine. And then when that can't go any further, when that's kind of locked, I start to rotate my stomach and then my hips around. And I just keep doing that. First, I look with my eyes, I feel the tension build up in my neck, and then I just continue to rotate around my spine. But I start from my eyes. It's like I'm looking and then I start rotating around, right? And you should try it in both directions for sure, right? So I'm rotating, so I'm starting from the spine, right? So I'm rotating my spine. I'm trying to feel how it's not just I'm turning from what I think, but I'm trying to feel my spine turning vertebrae by vertebrae, right? Um, then I'll start it from my hips. So I'll start turning my hips first, right? Like my hips go as far as they go, then my stomach, chest, and then finally my head. So the hips start the rotation. This is a little more awkward, right? But I can only tell you, so there's a couple of funny analogies. So when something, you hear something or boom, and you turn your head, right? And it's like, it's because you turn because you heard something, or if you see something, fly by you, it's like you rotate from your eyes. But when you want to turn, let's say when you don't want anybody to see you turning, right? You kind of turn from the hips more. It's like you try to not not show people you're turning, or you're trying to rotate around yourself without anybody noticing, right? You don't go from your eyes or from what you hear. You just rotate like from inside or from the hip area. So, and then I would do it with my feet. Let me just get back in camera. I do it. So I start to kind of rotate like my one foot as much as I can. And that rotation comes up to my knee, it comes up to my hips. So, and I turn, like literally in this case, my left foot is kind of shuffling and then the right one comes along, and I'm literally turning with the feet. And the same with my right foot. I'll go as far as it goes. It locks up my knee now, locks up this hip. I take a step with my left, and I just start to see how I can rotate around myself just using my feet. So that's a good way because you're understanding the body rotation, right? So we're talking about eyes, ears, hips, and feet. So we're kind of covering the posture as it goes to rotate around itself. And again, if you look at me, I'm this big with my shoulders and hips, right? When I rotate, you can see how much thinner I become, right? So in martial arts, you often see the person rotating, in many cases, to become a thinner target, right? So if somebody's barreling in a kick on me, I can be this big, or if I rotate in a very small spot, the kick or whatever danger can miss me, right? So rotating and using rotations to have a smaller profile, right? You often see it in other one that comes to my mind, maybe it's not a nice one, but bullfighting, right? You see the matador just kind of rotate around themselves with that little red cape, right? There's many more examples in sports that I have, but there's just one that comes to my mind, right? Where think of having to turn your body in a small space, right? Without a lot of left and right, but you have to just turn in one spot, right? So you know now how to rotate from your feet, from your hips, head and eyes, okay? Now, that's one level of rotation, right? So, and it's obvious because the spine is so long, right? The other levels of rotation we have are through our arms, right? So we can do each arm separate. So I'm dangling my fingers, right, towards the ground, and I start to kind of rotate first like my fingers, right? And I can feel the effects of turning my fingers have on my wrist, my elbow, and then my shoulder, and vice versa, right? And you can think about like a doorknob, like you're turning something, right? And now I'm doing it here. There's nothing to stop me from doing it here, right? Like, so I'm thinking about turning my fingers, not my wrist yet, my fingers, right? And how that affects my arms. Now I'm just taking it to here. I mean, you can do it where this rotation goes through one arm to the other arm. That's also possible, but I'm just kind of doing it now, kind of each individual arm. And then start my arms back beside me, and I'm going to start to rotate my wrist. So not from, so rotating my wrist. And then again, I watch the effects on my elbow and my shoulder, and even my fingers on the back end, right? And then I rotate my elbows. I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with doing this, right? But the rotation is confined to here. I'm talking about rotation now that goes up the arm. So there's no stop. I mean, you can rotate the elbows like this, right? Where they're kind of, on their own with a mild effect in the shoulder. You can rotate them like this, right? You can rotate them like this, right? There's no really right or wrong way, but for me, I find that I like rotating the arm up this way. So it's like somebody's twisting it, right? I find like I feel it clearer on my arms. So then I'm going to start to rotate again my elbows and eventually my shoulders. And again, I'm showing you now beside me, but it can be like in different ways, right? I can rotate in all kinds of positions, right? And I want to feel this concept of rotation on my body before I ever try apply it in kind of like a martial art setting or a self-defense setting where I'm trying to understand the concept. I want to see it first in myself. I want to play with this idea of how I can rotate my body. And if I rotate enough, you can see, if I rotate enough, I actually start to rotate my body too. So your arm can rotate you. Like I literally rotates, comes up, hits my shoulder, caves my shoulder into my chest, locking my mid back and moving my foot. So at the beginning, I do a rotation and I see where it stops. And then later I can relax into it. Like I can take it further. It's much like I was showing you the eyes, right? And at some point my head can't turn anymore and it stopped here. The only way I can turn more is if I relax my chest, and the only way I can turn more is if I relax my hips. So it's like I feel where the rotation ends, and then I find where I have to free to continue to rotate. So, and that goes for the whole body, right? But I like to isolate and then connect, isolate and then connect. So, let me see the limits of just rotating the finger. And then later, if I rotate the finger and the wrist, and then the finger, the wrist, the elbow, finger, wrist, shoulder, and the finger, wrist, body, right? Like the whole thing is connected through a rotation, okay? So that's the arms, the shoulders as well. And then I'm kind of making circles or rotations now through my chest. So it's like I'm imagining like a center point being the sternum. And it's like I make that rotation. And that rotation affects my spine in the back. Of course, I can feel my spine opening up, and it affects my ribs in the side, right? And by simply touching them, you can feel how that rotation has an effect, okay? I don't have something on my back, but if I were to lie down on a ball of some sort, I would feel the rotation, right? So I'm trying to feel what rotation feels like in my body. Okay, not just movement. I literally have a vision of a circle and rolling that circle. And first it's in my chest, I feel it, and then later you can see it starts to go to my hips. It starts to go to my knees, and the rotation that started in my chest is felt through the whole body. Okay, right, ultimately to my feet. Okay, the same concept happens in the stomach. So it's hard to see. I'm not gonna lift my shirt up. It's not gonna be one of those videos, guys. So I think about my stomach, and I start to kind of make like some circles, right? So like it can be circles this way or circles like this way. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to isolate it to my stomach, right? I'm trying to isolate that the rotation in my stomach. Okay, it can be up and down, left and right. And again, as I start to kind of start to free myself, I free my hips with this rotation. I free my knees, I free my chest, and then the whole body rotates because of a rotation I started in my stomach. Hips, exactly the same thing. I start to rotate my hips, and you can rotate the hips in different ways. Like I'm showing you circles, but it's also quite common figure eights. So think of, or an infinity symbol. Both are fine, whichever feels to you. The infinity circle is a little bit more complex. It's got a little more complexities in it. Nothing wrong with it. Whatever some people feel better than others. And again, at the beginning, you're isolating to the hips, and then later you start to take that rotation to the whole body, and my knees included, and even into my feet, right? As you're doing this, make sure that if you've watched good video about rotation, of all kinds of rotations, sports, mechanic, whatever it is, you keep that image in your head, because I see lots of people rotating, but they never connect it to something else. They just practice as a standalone thing to relax a joint, or I don't know, to show off. I don't know why you would do it, but they don't make the connection to, I'm trying to take a concept here so that I can understand it there, right? So that tomorrow, if somebody's punching or kicking or wrestling with me, that I understand rotations before I was scared, or before I was angry, or before I was frustrated, whatever happens in the middle of training, right? You need to know as a benchmark that you understand and feel the concept of rotation. This is important, right? So, and then I would go to my knees. Again, trying to isolate just the knees, and then as I allow the rotation to turn, I allow it to affect my hips, like open and close my hips, and also affect my feet on the bottom end. Okay, of course you can do the knee kind of like this and feel the rotations, right? You can feel them, but it's more isolated into like the knee joint. This way is kind of like I showed with the arms. You feel it up. You know, you want to be able to feel it up. Ankles are the same. I start to kind of rotate my ankle, and you can kind of see as I rotate in how it moves my knee and my hip, and as I rotate out how it moves my knee and hip. So it's like I'm rotating in, I'm rotating out, I'm rotating in, I'm rotating out. And many applications for this in sports, right? It's understanding how to like open the hip, close the hip, or change the angle of the knee, right? If there's somebody kicking towards here, how to kind of take it towards the back where it's a little bit safer, right? Like many applications, but it's from my ankle. So I push the heel out, I flare it out, I put it in, right? And from the rotation of the ankle comes an entire rotation, much like the hands came up the arm, okay? The same from the feet. And if it's some personal caveats, think about your head, your hands, and your feet, and rotating them, and you realize how it always comes up towards your body. It's really nice. And from the spine out towards the head, the feet, and the hands, right? So rotations can come in, like into you, and they can go out. So there's inner rotations and outer rotations, like a corkscrew. You can screw the screw in, I can screw it out. So that's another good idea of rotations, right? How you screw a screw in, and then you can also back it out. The same with any rotation, right? How it can affect me, right? So that's one way, right, of rotations. So as an added thing to your training, to prepare for the lessons this week, something like this is quite easy. You can do it with a chain. I have chains, but this is just basically a thick rope. And what I love doing with this is just watching it and feeling what something feels like that's rotating around my arm. Okay, and just watching it, this is a great sense of when you're, let's say, wrestling or studying how to grab somebody, you realize how tight that is. Like when things rotate around something, they get really tight, right? Snakes are good for that, right? Watching them, footage of snakes wrapping around something, constricting against something, how it's almost like they lack any, doesn't seem to be like any spine, right? And I do this around the arms, but then I also do it around the body, right? I also watch how the rope comes around my body or comes around my legs, right? Right. It's really nice to watch it and the way with which the speed with which it will wrap around something, right? And then also I study how to wrap, right? But then also how to unwrap. So it's wrapping. Just as easily, I can start it and unwrap it, right? So it wraps around me, I unwrap it. It wraps around me, I unwrap it. So with rotations, the string wraps around me. With a rotation, I unwrap myself. So wonderful when people grab you. That's how they wrap themselves. But do you know how to move to unwrap it or unrotate or rotate away from it? So people are studying how to rotate on top of you, let's say grab you somehow, and you should equally know how to unrotate or rotate away from this so that it doesn't screw in, right? So lots of great training with this. Chain is even more wonderful because it has a hurt element to it. if you're tense, it kind of tends to punish you, right? So this is a wonderful training tool, really inexpensive. You can just pick it up at Home Depot. Doing this, even for 5 minutes, just as a regular, it teaches you so much about good wrestling. Like it's tight like this. Like when people wrap themselves like an octopus, like you ever watch an octopus, it's like they have no bones in their arms. It's just, and they're able to wrap so well, right? And that's what it always felt like with a good wrestler. It's like they don't have any bones. They just wrap around you and they're on you like an octopus, right? Very little room for you to wiggle out of. So it's a great analogy and feeling with this to work with. The other thing I like to use, a little more difficult, is a stick. Now, it rotates as well, but in a different way. You have to rotate. So as the stick comes in, like let's say I'll take the stick, right? And you try to, at the beginning, rotate the stick, right? Like just in the air, and the different ways the stick can rotate. Try not to do it like, I guess you could do it like a martial artist, but try to do it like somebody that's just understanding how to move and rotate a stick, right? Just how to do it smoothly, right? And then later you start to kind of create other rotations. Like I'm creating a rotation now with my elbow, or creating a rotation now with my shoulder, right? So I'm holding the stick and I'm trying to rotate it with different body parts, and then rotate the stick, move it around my body. And, I'm not using it with my hands, but my body is acting like a fulcrum and it's moving around it, right? So it's like I rotate my body, I rotate the stick. I rotate my leg, I rotate the stick, right? So it's kind of like, so it's here, I rotate my leg, I rotate my leg. I rotate my arm, I rotate my arm. I rotate my arm, so it comes in, it goes out, right? In, out, in, out, in, out. And you can see I'm moving my body and trying to rotate. You can see, look at the power when you rotate. The stick comes in with rotation, I give it back with rotation. In, out with rotation. I don't want to, how can I say? This video is not meant to step-by-step about this, just an idea of to prepare you guys for this week. Rotations with a stick. And I even do it with my fingers, right? I understand how to rotate the stick with my fingers. Okay. And this is a great skill, especially when you're dealing with weapons, whether it's guns, knives, whatever it is. You need to have great dexterity in your fingers. Okay. Both fingers, left and right. Okay. One will always be better than the other, but having that to understand rotation and understand how to use your finger to do that, the same with the wrist, right? What rotations with the wrist, same with the elbow, right? I'm starting to make rotations with my elbow, but the stick is just showing me the rotation. I'm not trying to hit something, but I'm thinking about rotating my elbow, and the stick is connected. It's connected to it. I'm thinking about rolling my shoulders, rotation with my shoulders, and the stick is there. I rotate my chest, and the stick is there, right? I rotate my back, and the stick is there, right? rotate my hips, and the stick is there. Okay. So again, wonderful training tool for you to understand the concept of how to rotate around something that won't rotate. Like, this is just hard. It's different than the rope. The rope can wrap around you. In this case, you need to wrap around it, and you understand how to work with it. Very much like people that are quite stiff or tense, or stubborn, whatever you want to call it. You have to study how to go around them with the same rotation, right? So this is a wonderful training tool as well. And the other one I like to use, which really is quite wonderful, is a Swiss ball. And I'll start, I like beginning with it with hips, and just kind of rotating around the ball with my hips. So what I do is I sit flush on it, and then I go to one side, and now, like, there's no weight here, it's all here. And then I go forward, and then to the other side, and then deeper where there's no weight on my low back. And I just start to kind of move on the ball. And eventually, I work with my hips, and then I'll get into like my back, my stomach, and I'll just start to kind of move on the ball. And I'm looking to feel the rotation as my body weight starts to go. This ball is rotating. Like, as I shift my weight, I can feel every moment that I'm losing. I need to readjust. I need to as it rotates, it sucks me in. As I rotate, I move it. Like, there's a cause and effect. When two things are in motion, you can influence it, or it can influence you, or you can influence it. It can go back and forth. It changes. Like, maybe I roll on it and I move it to the left, but then I roll the other way. And so when two things are in motion, right, and they're connected, they're in relation to each other. You can't never lose sight of that. Never lose perspective. So, and you can do this with anything. Like, I can do it with rotations like this with my foot and my knee and my hips. So I'm understanding my legs, and how if I put pressure, the ball shoots my leg that way, and then I start to roll. So it's all rotation. The ball is rotating, which is forcing me to rotate my leg, right? So again, here's the concept of rotation in play with your legs, your hips, your body. With your arms, just find some wall. And the exact same idea is I'm rotating my arms as the ball is rotating on the wall, right? Yeah, I could even get into the body, like if I wanted to, just like it was on the ground, where I start to rotate and I feel the pressure of the ball and how to rotate myself on it. Lots of wonderful training with, and there's many different sizes. I mean, I got this big ball here, but there you can have even a smaller one and make it more challenging, or it can be different densities, like harder or softer. It's not right or wrong, just some ideas. So now there's many more concepts, but I'm trying to keep it simple, where things that you can do before you come to training to understand the topic the teacher is trying to cover. So this idea of understanding a rotation can be used in many regards in martial arts. How to take a punch, how to rotate away from the punch, or a direct force that's coming to you. Pressure is being applied to your elbow, how to rotate your shoulder or your wrist in such a way to change the angle of the shoulder. Pressure being applied to your wrist, how to relax your elbow to change that angle. Leg pressure coming to the side of your leg, which the knee doesn't bend this way, how to rotate it so that You don't bust up your knee. Countless. I've used it many times as rolling my ankle. I used to roll my ankle in sports all the time. Now I understand as I roll and the ankle comes to the edge, I relax my knee, I relax my hip and fall to the ground so that I don't bust the ankle or just basically sprain it or something lighter than a break. So concept of rotation can be used in defensive, can be used in even offensive things as well, because understanding rotations with strikes, and many of you have seen the Systema strike, that big rotations and how they gather a lot of power. But there's also little rotations that you can generate from quite short work, okay, from quite small spaces, because you understand there's big rotations and small rotations, right? There's hidden ones, there's visible ones. These are all important to understand, right? And from a perspective of being adaptive, rotating and rolling with things tends to make you more supple and more adaptive. So really opens up creativity and starts to make you supple but strong too. Like it's like you look at an animal like a lion or something, and you watch it, stalking its prey. You see the muscles, but it's also very soft. The way it walks, and then when it goes, But there's a suppleness to it, and that it's ready to go in any direction. It's ready to turn and twist, and it's amazing. So I hope this video gave you some insight into the training that you need to do maybe before class to understand some of the deeper concepts, because this advice was given to me years ago. If you want to understand something more, then you have to be ready to cut it thinner. So if you understand a concept just coming straight into a class and understand the concept, imagine if you went home and spent 5 minutes watching some videos on it and then spent 5 minutes of understanding just general rotation, your skills will grow. If you go home next month and say, I'm going to study it for 10 or 15 minutes before class, well, then your skills will grow too. So it's in proportion to, the amount of detail that you can muster, right? Work on concepts, understand them in different levels, not just in training. You need to understand them. In many cases, for me, the information that comes from here is now what you take home to practice and train with. It's not an end product. It's not just here. You got to take it home. And this concept of rotations is found in all kinds of different aspects in life and work. So make sure you give it the preparation work before class, especially this week. We're studying rotations, okay? Have a good time, everybody. Look forward to seeing everybody on the mats. Bye-bye.